Hello, everyone. I We're actually working on chapter 4, and I finished off at paragraph 6, but I just wanted to make one quick statement about paragraph 6 that I forgot to also mention as well, that I think we need to keep in mind when he writes here. Because we direct our thinking upon our observation, we have consciousness of objects. Because we direct it upon ourselves, we have consciousness of ourselves, or self-consciousness. Now, I just want us to keep this in mind during reading this book. It's a very simple concept, but we need to really make it clear and distinct in our minds that, as he stated, when we think about other objects, we have a consciousness, an awareness of other objects, but we can also direct that within ourselves. So I want us to keep in mind that we can direct our thinking and have awareness of objects and of ourselves, and it's a very distinct idea, and it seems very simple, but I think it's very important to keep in mind as we read this book, because it's seemingly obvious, but I think it will, understanding that and grasping that idea in your mind will probably help your understanding of this book. So I'm going to get started with paragraph 7. Okay. It must, however, not be overlooked that only with the help of thinking am I able to determine myself as a subject and contrast myself with objects. Therefore, thinking must never be regarded as a merely subjective activity. Thinking lies beyond subject and object. It produces these two concepts just as it produces all others. When, therefore, I, as thinking subject, refer a concept to an object, we must not regard this reference as something purely subjective. It is not the subject that makes the reference, but thinking. The subject does not think because it is a subject. Rather, it appears to itself as subject because it can think. The activity exercised by man as a thinking being is thus not merely subjective. Rather, it is something neither subjective nor objective that transcends both these concepts. I ought never to say that my individual subject thinks, but much more that my individual subject lives by the grace of thinking. Thinking is thus an element which leads me out beyond myself and connects me with the objects, but at the same time it separates me from them, inasmuch as it sets me, as subject, over against them. The summary we have for paragraph 7 is, thinking lies beyond and forms the concepts of subject and object. Through thinking, we unite ourselves with objects, and yet define ourselves as subjects in contrast to objects. And this paragraph also is important as well, and we need to really make clear in our minds that thinking is not a subjective activity, and that it is beyond subjective and it's beyond objective. It has this, and when you think about it, the term subject and object are concepts that we get to by thinking. So thinking produces these concepts of subject and object as well. And so we have to realize that as well, and really distinguish this. And what else was important? So yes, thinking transcends these concepts of subjective and objective, and that's really important that we understand that and make it clear in our minds. Also, thinking is something, as he mentions, thinking is something which leads me out beyond myself and connects me with objects. So, but at the same time, it separates me from that. And so he talks about this further on in the book, but this is sort of the trick about thinking, is that it can connect me to things, but at the same time it can separate me from things. So that's what's very interesting about thinking, is it has this, what appears to be a dual quality, that it can connect me with objects, but also separate me from objects. So that is really what's important in paragraph 7. Those two main points is that it's beyond those subject and objective, and that it creates those two concepts, but also that it separates things, but also connects me to objects. Paragraph 8. It is just this which constitutes the double nature of man. He thinks and thereby embraces both himself and the rest of the world. But at the same time, it is by means of thinking that he determines himself as an individual confronting things. And the summary for that is, our dual nature is revealed by means of thinking, which defines us as individuals confronting yet connecting with the rest of the world. And that's just what I just said earlier. It was basically thinking has this is what this thinking creates, this what we think is a dual nature in ourselves, is that, you know, we feel very confused because thinking can make us feel connected to things, but at the same time it separates us from things. So this is sort of where thinking can sort of cause confusion in human beings unless we really understand the role that thinking plays, and really truly understand what thinking can do. And really this analyzing of what thinking is can help us confront this duality that thinking creates in us, because if we don't realize that thinking can make us connect us to things but at the same time separate us, if we don't realize that dual quality, it will be very frustrating for us, and we need to accept these little facts of what thinking does. And I think it's very important that we realize that, and just realizing that in itself can probably make us not feel so frustrated by the times that we feel separated from things, because that's just what thinking does. But at the same time, it can connect us. So let's just keep that in mind as well. Paragraph 10. In order to answer this question, we must eliminate from our field of observation everything that has been imported by thinking, for at any moment the content of consciousness will already be interwoven with concepts in the most varied ways. And the summary for that is, the relationships established through thinking are not merely subjective. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong paragraph. No, paragraph 10. We must purge our field of observation of all concepts in order to answer this question. Actually, I think I skipped the summary for paragraph 9, so let me go back to paragraph 9. The summary we have of paragraph 9 is, how does the element which we call the object of observation enter our consciousness? So that's the summary for 9. And the summary for 10 is, we must purge our field of observation of all concepts in order to answer this question. So he wants us now to just sort of stop and get rid of all he wants us to purge in our field of observations of all concepts, so we can answer this question. I'm going to end it right there, and hopefully the next paragraph will get into this idea more. So thank you all, and happy thinking.